Welcome, dear friends, to a space where your heart finds strength and your spirit finds guidance. You've just stepped into the Wisdom MBIC, a place dedicated to uplifting souls, sharing wisdom and igniting the fire of purpose in every life. Here, we explore powerful truths, inspirational stories, and life-changing insights that touch the core of who you are. I am truly grateful you're here today because your presence matters, your journey matters, and your growth matters. Together, we will uncover lessons that not only transform your mindset, but also bring you closer to the life and blessings God has prepared for you. Now, so take a deep breath, open your heart, and let's begin this journey of hope, courage, and faith, because today is the day your life can change forever. There comes a moment in life when a person must make a decision that defines the direction of their future. It is the moment when you realize that what once held your heart can no longer hold your destiny. Relationships are powerful because they shape our emotions, our thoughts, and even our sense of identity. But not every relationship is meant to continue forever. Some relationship is meant to continue forever. Some relationships enter our lives for a season to teach us lessons about love, patience, wisdom, and boundaries. When that season ends, holding on to what God has already released can quietly steal the peace that was meant for your future. Many people struggle with the temptation to go back to what is familiar, even when it is unhealthy. The heart remembers the good moments, the laughter, the shared memories, and the comfort of familiarity. But wisdom requires you to see beyond emotions and recognize the deeper truth. Just because something was once meaningful does not mean it is still meant for your life today. Growth often demands separation. Progress sometimes requires distance. Progress sometimes requires distance. The scriptures remind us in Isaiah 43 verse 18 and 19, "Do not remember the former things, nor consider the things of old. Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Shall you not know it?" This verse carries a powerful principle about life. The Creator is always moving forward, and when you hold tightly to the past, you can miss the new direction that is being prepared for you. When something has ended, it does not always mean failure. Sometimes it means preparation. Sometimes it means preparation. Sometimes it means preparation. Sometimes it means that you have reached the limit of what that relationship was able to teach you. One of the most difficult emotional battles a person faces is letting go of a relationship that once felt important. The heart asks questions, the mind replays conversations, and the soul wonders whether things could have been different. But there is a difference between reflection and returning. Reflection helps you grow, but returning to the wrong place can reopen wounds that took years to heal. In the book of Genesis, we read the story of Lot and his family leaving a place that had become corrupted and dangerous. They were instructed not to look back, yet Lot's wife turned back, and the moment she looked back, she became stuck in the past forever, as recorded in Genesis 19 verse 26. This story is not simply about geography, it is about mentality. Looking back in longing for what God has already removed from your path can trap you emotionally and spiritually. Sometimes people want to go back to old relationships because loneliness whispers lies to the heart. Loneliness can make you believe that being in the wrong relationship is better than being alone. But the truth is that peace in solitude is far healthier than chaos in companionship. When you learn to value your peace, you begin to understand that not every connection deserves access to your heart. Proverbs 4 verse 23 says, "Guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it flow the issues of life." Guarding your heart does not mean becoming cold or distant. It means developing the wisdom to recognize what deserves your emotional energy and what must remain in your past. Your heart is not a place where broken patterns should be repeated. It is a sacred space where purpose, faith, and love should grow. There are relationships that begin with excitement, but slowly become environments of confusion, insecurity, and emotional exhaustion. When a relationship constantly drains your spirit, it begins to distract you from the purpose you were created to pursue. You cannot fully walk in your calling if your emotional life is constantly trapped in cycles of disappointment, and instability. Sometimes God removes certain people from your life because your future requires a different environment. The person you were 5 years ago is not the same person you are becoming today. As you grow spiritually, emotionally, and mentally, your relationships must also reflect that growth. If someone only connects with the version of you that existed in your past, they may struggle to support the version of you that is rising in your future. Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1 teaches that there is a season for everything and a time for every purpose under heaven. That means relationships also have seasons. Some seasons are beautiful and joyful, while others are meant to end so that new chapters can begin. Recognizing when a season has ended is a sign of maturity. There are individuals who repeatedly return to the same relationship, hoping that things will somehow transform without genuine change. They believe that this time the situation will be different, even though the patterns remain the same. But growth requires honesty. If the same behaviors, the same disrespect, and the same emotional pain continue to appear, then returning to that relationship is not faith, it is denial. Faith does not ignore. Faith does not ignore reality. Faith gives you the strength to walk away from what harms your spirit. Faith reminds you that your value is not determined by whether someone chooses you or leaves you. Your value comes from the Creator who formed your life with intention and purpose. Psalm 139 verse 14 says, "You are fearfully and wonderfully made." That means your life carries worth beyond what any human opinion can measure. When you truly understand your value, you stop chasing relationships that cannot recognize your worth. Another reason people return to old relationships is the fear of starting over. Beginning again can feel uncertain and uncomfortable. The unknown often appears intimidating, but sometimes the unknown is where your greatest growth waits for you. Remaining in a familiar place that limits your peace will never lead you to the future that God intends for you. Think about the journey of the Israelites leaving Egypt. And bar the journey of the Israelites leaving Egypt, Egypt represented bondage, limitation, and suffering. Even after they were freed, some of them wanted to return to Egypt because the wilderness felt uncertain. Yet the wilderness was the path to the promised land. If they had returned to Egypt, they would have returned to captivity. They would have returned to captivity. In the same way, returning to unhealthy relationships can quietly return you to emotional bondage. Exodus 14, verse 17, records a powerful instruction: move forward. These two words capture a principle that applies to every area of life. Moving forward requires courage. It requires faith in a future that you cannot yet see. But progress is only possible when you release what belongs behind you. It is also important to remember that forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. Forgiveness is essential for your healing because it releases bitterness from your heart. But forgiveness does not always mean that a relationship must continue. Sometimes forgiveness allows you to close a chapter peacefully without reopening the door. When you forgive someone, you are not saying that what happened was acceptable. You are choosing freedom over resentment. You are choosing peace over emotional chains. You are allowing your heart to move forward without carrying the weight of anger. To move forward without carrying the weight of anger. As you grow in faith, you begin to realize that relationships should add strength, clarity, and encouragement to your life. They should inspire you to become better, not push you toward confusion and insecurity. A healthy relationship supports your spiritual growth, respects your values, and contributes to your sense of purpose. The scripture in 1 Corinthians 15 verse 33 warns that bad company corrupts good character. This is not meant to condemn people, but to remind us that the environment around us influences the direction of our lives. When you remain connected to unhealthy influences long enough, they can gradually reshape your mindset, your decisions, and your expectations. Choosing not to return to an old relationship is not always easy. There may be moments when memories attempt to pull you backward. There may be days when loneliness makes the past appear more beautiful than it truly was. But in those moments, you must remember why that chapter ended. You must remember the lessons you learned, the strength you gained, and the peace you began to discover after stepping away. Growth often begins the moment you stop repeating patterns that once held you captive. Jeremiah 29 verse 11 declares that God has plans for your welfare and not for harm, plans to give you a future and hope. That promise reminds you that your story is still unfolding. That promise reminds you that your story is still unfolding. The ending of one relationship does not mean the ending of love in your life. It simply means that your journey is being redirected towards something healed, dear, wiser, and more aligned with your purpose. When you refuse to return to what damaged your peace, you are making a powerful statement about your identity. So you are making a powerful statement about your identity. You are declaring that your future deserves more than recycled pain. You are declaring that your heart deserves an environment where trust, respect, and faith can grow. Every step you take away from the past is a step closer to the life that has been waiting for you. And while the road forward may sometimes feel uncertain, it also carries possibilities that cannot appear until you fully release what once held you back. And as you continue walking forward with courage, with faith, and with the quiet confidence that your life is guided by a purpose greater than temporary emotions, you will begin to notice that something inside your spirit is becoming stronger, clearer, and more peaceful. And that transformation is only the beginning of a journey that is still unfolding ahead of you as your heart continues to learn what it truly means to move forward without looking back, and to trust that the future waiting for you holds a wisdom and a peace that the past could never provide, as the story continues to unfold one step at a time, moving steadily toward the next chapter that has not yet fully revealed itself, but is already being prepared just beyond the horizon of where you stand today. And as you continue moving forward, there will be moments when the memory of that old relationship tries to return quietly into your thoughts. The mind as a way of replaying scenes that once carried emotion. You may remember the laughter, the conversations, the small moments that once felt meaningful. But wisdom teaches you to remember the entire picture, not just the parts that feel comfortable. Growth requires honesty with yourself. If that relationship brought more confusion than peace, more tears than joy, and more uncertainty than stability, then returning to it will not suddenly transform it into something healthy. Life teaches us that patterns rarely change simply because time has passed. Change requires transformation of character, values, and direction. When a relationship repeatedly cycles through the same problems, the same emotional wounds, and the same appointment, it is often a sign that the foundation itself was never healthy. You cannot build a peaceful future on a foundation that constantly shakes. The scriptures remind us in Proverbs 3 verses 5 and 6 to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, but acknowledge Him in all your ways, and He will direct your paths. Sometimes the path that God directs you toward includes leaving places, people, and situations that no longer align with your growth. That direction may feel uncomfortable at first because the heart naturally desires familiarity, but the Creator sees what you cannot see and understands what your future requires. There are people who enter relationships hoping that love alone will solve every problem. There are people who enter relationships hoping that love alone will solve every problem. But love must be supported by respect, patience, responsibility, and honesty. Without these qualities, even the strongest emotions can become fragile. A relationship that lacks integrity eventually becomes a place where trust slowly fades and peace quietly disappears. When you reflect on your past relationship, you may recognize moments when you tried to fix what was never meant to be repaired. 4. Many individuals carry the burden of believing that if they had tried harder, spoken differently, or sacrificed more, then the relationship might have survived. But healthy love does not require you to lose yourself in order to keep someone else. A relationship that demands the constant surrender of your peace, dignity, or values is not a relationship that can sustain a healthy future. The book of Philippians, chapter 3, verse 13, offers a powerful reminder when it says, forgetting what lies behind and reaching forward to what lies ahead. This verse does not suggest erasing your memories or pretending the past never happened. Instead, it speaks about releasing the emotional weight that prevents you from stepping into the future prepared for you. Your life was not created to move in circles. It was created to grow, to develop, to expand, and to mature. Every season of life carries lessons that shape your character. The experiences you faced in your previous relationship may have taught you about patience, communication, boundaries, and self-respect. Those lessons were not wasted. Those lessons were not wasted. They were preparing you for a wiser chapter. Sometimes people return to old relationships because they fear that they may never experience love again. That fear quietly convinces them that the familiar pain they know is better than the uncertainty of something new. But fear is not a reliable guide for your decisions. But fear is not a reliable guide for your decisions. Fear often keeps people trapped in situations that limit their happiness and delay their growth. Faith, however, invites you to believe that your future holds possibilities that your past could never provide. When you walk by faith, you begin to understand that every ending also carries the potential for a new beginning. The same God who allowed one chapter to close is capable of opening another chapter filled with healthier connections, deeper understanding, and greater peace. Psalm 37 verse 23 declares that the steps of a good person are ordered by the Lord. That means your life is not guided by accidents. Even the difficult seasons you have experienced were shaping your perspective, preparing your character, and strengthening your resilience. The pain you once carried is now becoming wisdom that protects your future. There are moments when the heart may feel lonely after leaving a relationship that once held a significant place in your life. Loneliness is a natural human emotion. Loneliness is a natural human emotion, but loneliness is temporary, while the consequences of returning to an unhealthy relationship can last much longer. Learning to embrace moments of solitude allows you to reconnect with your identity, rediscover your passions, and rebuild your sense of peace. During these seasons, you begin to realize that your worth does not depend on someone else's presence in your life. Your value existed before that relationship began, and it continues to exist long after it ended. The Creator placed purpose within you that cannot be erased by another person's inability to recognize it. In the book of Psalm 46, verse 10, there is a simple but powerful instruction: be still and know that I am God. Sometimes stillness is necessary for healing. When you allow yourself to pause, reflect, and reconnect with your faith, you begin to hear the quiet wisdom that was previously hidden beneath emotional noise. Being still does not mean remaining stuck. It means giving your heart the space it needs to heal and grow. In that stillness, you begin to rediscover your strength. You begin to understand that you are capable of building a life filled with meaning, joy, and stability without returning to what once wounded your spirit. Another important lesson about relationships is that compatibility involves more than shared emotions. It involves shared values, vision, and direction. Two individuals may care deeply for each other, yet still find themselves moving toward different futures. When values conflict, when goals diverge, and when respect begins to fade, continuing the relationship often leads to greater frustration. Healthy relationships support your spiritual growth rather than distract you from it. They encourage honesty, kindness, and patience. They create an environment where both individuals feel respected and understood. When a relationship repeatedly undermines these qualities, it becomes difficult for either person to truly flourish. The scripture in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14 reminds believers about the importance of alignment in relationships. This principle encourages individuals to build connections that share similar values and spiritual direction. When two people walk in different directions, spiritually, emotionally, or morally, their journey together becomes increasingly complicated. Letting go of a past relationship is not a sign of weakness. It is a demonstration of maturity. It reflects the courage to prioritize your emotional and spiritual well-being, even when your heart still remembers the past. Courage is not the absence of emotion. Courage is the decision to move forward despite those emotions. As you continue walking forward, you may begin to notice something remarkable happening within you. The same memories that once caused pain slowly lose their power. The same thoughts that once created doubt begin to fade. The same questions that once filled your mind with confusion are gradually replaced by clarity. Healing does not always happen in dramatic moments. Healing does not always happen in dramatic moments. Often it unfolds quietly, day by day, as you choose to invest your energy in healthier habits, stronger faith, and meaningful relationships with people who respect your journey. The book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 28, assures us that all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to His purpose. Even the heartbreak you experience is not outside the reach of redemption. It can become part of the story that shapes your wisdom, empathy, and understanding. When you refuse to return to what once harmed your peace, you are choosing growth over comfort. You are choosing faith over fear. You are choosing a future that has room for healthier connections and deeper fulfillment. Your life was never meant to be defined by one relationship. It was designed to be a journey of discovery, growth, and purpose. It was designed to be a journey of discovery, growth, and purpose. Along that journey, you will meet people who encourage you, people who challenge you, and people who teach you important lessons about love and boundaries. But the most important relationship you will ever develop is your relationship with God. When that connection becomes strong, your sense of identity becomes stable. You no longer depend on another person's approval to feel valuable. Instead, you recognize that your life already carries purpose. As your faith deepens, you begin to trust that the same God who protected you from the wrong relationship is also guiding you toward healthier possibilities. Sometimes protection appears in the form of closed doors. Sometimes love is expressed through separation rather than continuation. And as you continue walking forward with patience, courage, and faith, you will begin to experience a quiet transformation within your heart. The pain of the past will gradually turn into wisdom. The uncertainty you once felt will slowly become confidence. The loneliness that once worried you will transform into peaceful independence. The loneliness that once worried you will transform into peaceful independence. This transformation does not happen overnight, but it happens consistently when you commit to growth. Each day you move further away from the emotional patterns that once held you back and closer to the life that is waiting to unfold ahead of you. There will come a moment when you look back at your past relationship, not with regret, but with gratitude for the lessons it taught you. You will realize that letting go was not the end of your story. It was the beginning of a new chapter where your heart becomes stronger, your vision becomes clearer, and your faith becomes deeper. And as your journey continues, you will discover that moving forward without returning to what once held you back creates space for new experiences, new friendships, and new opportunities that align with the person you are becoming. Step by step, your life begins to reflect the quiet strength that comes from trusting the path ahead even when the future is still unfolding, and that trust will continue guiding you as the next part of your story begins to reveal itself little by little with each new step you choose to take forward. As time continues to move forward, you begin to notice that distance from the past slowly brings clarity to the heart. When you were inside the relationship, everything felt confusing and emotional. Decisions were influenced by feelings, memories, and hopes that things might somehow improve. But distance allows you to see the situation from a wider perspective. You begin to recognize patterns that once felt invisible. You begin to understand conversations that once left you puzzled. And you begin to realize that many of the struggles you faced were not simply temporary problems, but signs that the relationship itself was not built on a healthy foundation. Clarity is one of the quiet gifts that comes with time and faith. When you step away from a painful situation and allow your spirit to heal, you begin to rediscover the voice of wisdom that may have been drowned out by emotional noise. That wisdom reminds you that your life has value beyond what any relationship can define. It reminds you that your purpose does not depend on whether someone chooses to remain in your life or decides to walk away. There are individuals who spend years returning to relationships that repeatedly break their spirit. Each time they hope that this will be the moment when everything changes. They hope that love alone will repair what years of unhealthy patterns have damaged. But love without transformation cannot sustain a healthy future. A relationship must grow just as individuals grow. Without growth, it becomes a cycle. Without growth, it becomes a cycle. Here the same pain returns in different forms. In the book of Proverbs chapter 13, verse 20, the scripture teaches that those who walk with the wise will become wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. So, this verse is not meant to insult anyone. Instead, it highlights the influence that relationships have on our lives. The people who surround you shape your mindset, your decisions, and your direction. When you remain connected to environments that encourage negativity, disrespect, or emotional instability, your own life begins to absorb those same patterns. But when you choose to move forward and surround yourself with individuals who value integrity, kindness, and faith, your perspective begins to transform. You begin to feel encouraged instead of drained. You begin to feel respected instead of questioned. Your spirit begins to feel lighter because the environment around you supports your growth rather than resisting it. One of the most powerful realizations a person can experience is the understanding that peace is not negotiable. Peace is not a luxury reserved for a few fortunate people. Peace is a necessary foundation for a healthy life. When a relationship constantly disrupts your peace, it becomes difficult to focus on your purpose, your faith, and your future. Jesus once spoke about peace in the book of John chapter 14, verse 27, saying, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do, I give to you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid." This verse reminds us that true peace does not come from circumstances alone. It comes from alignment with God and from making choices that protect the well-being of your spirit. Returning to an unhealthy relationship often means inviting back the same confusion that once troubled your heart. It means reopening the door to conversations that leave you exhausted and situations that challenge our sense of self-worth. When you recognize this truth, you begin to see that protecting your peace is not selfish. It is wise. There are moments when people attempt to convince themselves that they are responsible for saving a relationship that is clearly struggling. They feel obligated to remain because they fear that leaving might hurt the other person or appear disloyal. But responsibility must have boundaries. Appear disloyal, but responsibility must have boundaries. You are responsible for your actions, your integrity, and your growth, but you are not responsible for another person's unwillingness to change. Healthy relationships require effort from both individuals. They require honesty, humility, and a genuine commitment to improvement. When only one person carries the weight of fixing every problem, the relationship slowly becomes unbalanced. Over time, that imbalance creates emotional fatigue that no amount of effort can sustain. Galatians chapter 6, verse 9 encourages believers not to grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time they will reap a harvest if they do not give up. This principle applies to life in general. Your efforts to grow your faith, strengthen your character, and protect your peace will eventually produce a harvest of wisdom, stability, and healthy connections. But continuing to invest energy in a relationship that repeatedly harms your spirit is not the same as perseverance. True perseverance moves you toward growth, while unhealthy persistence keeps you trapped in the same painful cycle. Another important truth about moving forward is learning to forgive yourself. Many people carry guilt for staying too long in relationships that were not healthy, for staying too long in relationships that were not healthy. They look back and question their decisions, wondering why they ignored certain signs or accepted treatment that did not reflect their worth. Self-forgiveness is essential for healing. At the time you made those decisions, you were acting with the understanding and emotional strength you had in that moment. Growth means learning from the past rather than condemning yourself for it. The lessons you gained will now guide you to make wiser decisions in the future. Psalm 147 verse 3 declares that God heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. This verse reminds us that healing is possible even after deep emotional pain. When you bring your heart to God with honesty and humility, you allow His presence to restore the areas that were once wounded. Healing does not erase the past, but it transforms your relationship with it. Instead of feeling trapped by memories, you begin to see them as chapters that contributed to your personal growth. The same experiences that once caused pain become the wisdom that protects your future. As you continue walking forward, you may begin to encounter new people who treat you with kindness, respect, and patience. Respect and patience. At first, these healthier interactions may feel unfamiliar because your heart became accustomed to a different environment. But over time, you begin to recognize that healthy relationships feel peaceful rather than confusing. In a healthy relationship, communication brings understanding rather than conflict. Respect becomes natural rather than something you must constantly request. Respect becomes natural. Trust develops gradually through consistent actions rather than promises that remain unfulfilled. These experiences remind you that love was never meant to feel like a constant battle. Love should inspire growth, not anxiety. It should create stability, not emotional turbulence. Why? It should create stability, not emotional turbulence. The book of 1 Corinthians chapter 13 describes the nature of love in a powerful way, saying that love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy it, does not boast it, is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, and it keeps no record of wrongs. This description reveals that love involves change. The description reveals that love involves change. Erected not only emotion, when you begin to understand the true nature of love as described in the scriptures, you also begin to recognize how different it is from many of the relationships people hold on to. Love is not constant confusion. Love is not manipulation. Love is not disrespect hidden behind temporary apologies. Love is not disrespect hidden behind temporary apologies. Real love reflects patience, gentleness, honesty, and responsibility. When those qualities are missing for long periods of time, the relationship slowly becomes something different from what it was meant to be. As your understanding grows, you start to realize that walking away from an unhealthy relationship was not an act of abandonment, but an act of wisdom. Sometimes the bravest decision a person can make is to release what once felt important in order to protect the future that has been entrusted to them. The heart may still carry memories, but wisdom reminds you that memories are not instructions to return. There are seasons when people attempt to reconnect with the past simply because time has passed. They believe that distance alone has changed everything. They believe that distance alone has changed everything. Yet genuine transformation requires more than time. It requires humility, reflection, responsibility, and a commitment to change. Reflection, responsibility, and a commitment to change. Without those elements, the same patterns quietly return and the same wounds slowly reopen. This is why discernment is such an important gift. This is why discernment is such an important gift. Discernment allows you to see beyond words and observe the direction of a person's character. When someone has truly changed, their actions become consistent, their communication becomes respectful, and their priorities reflect maturity. But if nothing has changed except a passage of time, then returning to that relationship will likely lead back to the same struggles. The scripture in James chapter 1, verse 5 says that if anyone lacks wisdom, they should ask God, who gives generously without finding fault, and it will be given to them. Wisdom is not reserved for a few special individuals. It is available to anyone who sincerely seeks it. When you ask God for wisdom regarding your relationships, your decisions, and your future, He will guide your heart in ways that protect your peace. Guidance sometimes appears through quiet convictions within your spirit. Sometimes it appears through the counsel of wise individuals who care about your well-being. And sometimes it appears through circumstances that clearly reveal whether a situation supports your growth or threatens your stability. As you continue to grow in faith, you begin to notice that your standards change. The things you once tolerated no longer feel acceptable. The behaviors you once excused begin to appear as warning signs. This transformation is not arrogance. It is the natural result of spiritual and emotional maturity. When your life begins to align more closely with faith, purpose, and wisdom, you start to value environments that support those qualities. You become more careful about who has access to your heart, your time, and your energy, not because you have become distant, but because you have learned that your peace is worth protecting, Psalm 1 verse 1 offers a powerful insight into this principle by saying, "Blessed is the person who does not walk in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stand in the path of sinners, nor sit in the seat of mockers." This verse highlights the influence of association, the environments and relationships you choose to remain and shape the direction of your life. When you refuse to return to a relationship that repeatedly harmed your spirit, you are choosing a different path. You are choosing a different path. You are choosing a path where peace has room to grow, where faith has space to deepen, and where your future is not controlled by the mistakes of the past. There will be moments along this path when doubt may try to return. The mind may question whether you made the right decision. You may wonder whether leaving that relationship closed a door that could have eventually led to happiness. But in those moments, it is important to remember the reasons that led you to walk away. Remember the nights when your heart felt heavy. Remember the conversations that left you confused and exhausted. Remember the times when you felt unseen or unappreciated. These memories are not meant to create bitterness. They are reminders of why growth required separation. Bitterness will only burden your spirit, while wisdom will strengthen it. Choosing wisdom means acknowledging the past honestly while refusing to allow it to control your future. It means recognizing that some chapters must remain closed so that new chapters have room to begin. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 8 teaches that the end of a matter is better than its beginning, and patience is better than pride. Sometimes the ending of a relationship reveals truths that were hidden during its beginning. What once appeared beautiful may later reveal weaknesses that could not sustain a healthy future. Patience allows you to trust that the closing of one chapter does not mean your story has ended. It simply means that the narrative is moving in a new direction. The same God who guided you through the pain of letting go is capable of guiding you into relationships that reflect greater understanding, respect, and spiritual alignment. Another important aspect of moving forward is learning to rebuild your identity. After leaving a significant relationship, many individuals struggle with the question of who they are without that connection. When two lives become closely intertwined, it can feel difficult to rediscover your individuality. But this season of rediscovery is actually a gift. It allows you to reconnect with your passions, your dreams, and your calling. It allows you to explore that key aspects of your life that may have been neglected while you were trying to maintain a relationship that required constant attention. During this time, you may find yourself developing new interests, strengthening your faith, or investing energy into goals that once felt distant. Each of these steps contributes to the restoration of your confidence and the expansion of your vision. The scripture in Isaiah chapter 40 verse 31 says that those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall rise up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not grow weary. They shall walk and not faint. Waiting upon God does not mean remaining inactive. It means trusting His timing while continuing to grow and prepare for the future He is shaping for you. Strength is renewed when you choose faith instead of fear. Strength is renewed when you release resentment and embrace forgiveness. Strength is renewed when you stop returning to environments that weaken your spirit and begin building a life that supports your well-being. Over time, you will notice that the emotional weight you once carried becomes lighter. The past no longer feels like a chain holding you back. Instead, it becomes a teacher that equipped you with wisdom for the journey ahead. You begin to appreciate the quiet peace that now fills your life. The calm conversations, the supportive friendships, and the stability you once longed for slowly become part of your daily experience. This peace is not accidental. It is the result of courageous decisions that protected your heart. Then, as your life continues to unfold, you may encounter someone new whose character reflects patience, kindness, and sincerity. This new connection may feel different from what you experienced before. Instead of confusion, there is clarity. Instead of tension, there is understanding. Healthy love grows gradually through respect, honesty, and shared value. As it does not rush or pressure, it develops through consistent actions that demonstrate genuine care. When you have learned from the past, you are better prepared to recognize these qualities and nurture them wisely. But even if new relationships take time to appear, your life remains meaningful and complete. Your purpose is not dependent on being in a relationship. Your purpose is rooted in the gifts, talents, and calling that God placed within you. Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11 reminds us that God has plans to give you a future and hope. That promise extends far beyond any single relationship. It covers every aspect of your life, including your growth, your faith, and the connections that will shape your journey ahead. When you trust that promise, you begin to live with confidence instead of fear. You stop looking backward, hoping to revive what was never meant to continue. Instead, you move forward with the quiet assurance that your future is being guided by wisdom greater than your own understanding. And as you continue walking this path with patience, humility, and faith, you will begin to see how every step away from the past has brought you closer to the person you were always meant to become. The lessons you learned, the strength you developed, and the peace you protected are all shaping a life that reflects maturity, resilience, and hope. Your story is still unfolding, and the chapters ahead carry opportunities for growth, connection, and purpose that could only appear once you released what no longer belonged in your journey. Each new day invites you to move forward with confidence, knowing that the past has already served its role and the future remains open, filled with possibilities that are slowly revealing themselves. As you continue to walk faithfully into the life that has been prepared for you, as the journey continues, you begin to notice that healing is not only about you distance from the past, but also about the transformation that begins inside your heart. At first, the separation from an old relationship may feel like an empty space. Wherever the empty space, you wake up some mornings feeling quiet where there used to be constant communication. You move through days where memories occasionally appear without warning. But slowly that empty space begins to fill with something new. It begins to fill with peace, clarity, and a deeper understanding of who you are becoming. Growth rarely feels dramatic while it is happening. It unfolds quietly through small daily decisions. Each day you choose not to revisit the past, you strengthen your discipline. Each day you choose faith instead of fear, your confidence grows a little stronger. Each day you remind yourself that your life carries purpose beyond a single relationship you built, a foundation that cannot easily be shaken again. One of the greatest transformations that occurs after leaving an unhealthy relationship is the rediscovery of your inner voice. During difficult relationship, many people silence their own wisdom. During difficult relationships, many people silence their own wisdom. They ignore the discomfort in their spirit because they hope things will improve. They compromise their boundaries because they want to preserve the connection. She said, want to preserve the connection. Over time, that inner voice becomes quiet. But when you step away from the environment that suppressed your peace, that voice begins to return. You begin to recognize your own values more clearly. You begin to trust your instincts again. You begin to understand what you truly deserve in your relationships and what you are no longer willing to accept. This is part of the restoration that faith brings into a person's life. In the book of Joel, chapter 2, verse 25, there is a promise that speaks deeply to those who have experienced loss when it says that God will restore the years that were eaten away. Restoration does not mean pretending the past. Never happened. Restoration means that the experiences you endured will not be wasted. They will become part of the wisdom that strengthens your future. Many individuals look back at broken relationships with regret, believing they lost valuable time. They think about the years they invested, the energy they gave, and the dreams they once built around that connection. But when you walk with faith, you begin to understand that even difficult seasons carry purpose. The lessons you gain during that time may be the very insights that protect you from greater pain in the future. Time invested in learning is never truly wasted. The understanding you gained about boundaries, communication, respect, and emotional health will now influence every relationship you build moving forward. Instead of repeating old patterns, you now have the awareness to choose differently. Another powerful change that happens during this journey is the development of patience. In the past, you may have rushed into decisions, hoping to secure love quickly or to repair problems before they grew larger. But patience teaches you that healthy relationships develop through time, observation, and consistency. The book of Proverbs chapter 19 verse 2 says that desire without knowledge is not good, and whoever makes haste with their feet misses their way. This wisdom reminds us that rushing into emotional decisions can sometimes lead us into situations that our hearts were not prepared to handle. Patience allows you to observe character over time rather than relying only on promises or initial impressions. When you begin to live with patience, you no longer feel pressure to fill every empty space in your life with another relationship. Instead, you become comfortable allowing connections to develop naturally. Instead, you become comfortable allowing connections to develop naturally. You focus on your growth, your faith, and your purpose while trusting that the right relationships will appear. And your purpose while trusting that the right relationships will appear are at the right time. This mindset creates a healthier environment for love to grow in the future. Instead of choosing someone out of loneliness, you will choose someone whose character aligns with your values and whose presence adds peace to your life. There is also a deeper spiritual lesson that emerges during this process. You begin to understand that your identity was never meant to be defined by another human being. Relationships are meaningful and important, but they are not the foundation of your worth. Your identity originates from the Creator who formed your life with intention and purpose. Psalm 139 reminds us that every person is wonderfully made and known completely by God. This truth gives you a sense of security that no relationship can fully provide. When you understand that your value is rooted in your creation, you stop seeking validation in places that cannot sustain it. This realization changes the way you approach future relationships. Instead of looking for someone to complete you, you begin looking for someone to complete you. You begin looking for someone who can walk beside you as you both grow in faith, wisdom, and purpose. A healthy relationship is not built on dependency, but on partnership. Partnership means that both individuals bring strength, support, and respect into the connection. Partnership means that both individuals bring strength, support, and respect into the connection. They encourage one another's growth rather than competing for control. They communicate openly rather than hiding their concerns. They celebrate each other's progress instead of feeling threatened by it. These qualities cannot grow in an environment where old emotional wounds continue to reopen. That is why refusing to return to an unhealthy relationship is such an important step toward building something better in the future. As the months and years pass, you may find yourself reflecting on the person you were before that relationship ended. You may realize how much you have grown emotionally, spiritually, and mentally since that time. The struggles you once faced may now appear as lessons that shaped your character. You might notice that your reactions to challenges have changed. Situations that once overwhelmed you now feel manageable. Conversations that once triggered strong emotions now feel easier to navigate. This growth is evidence that the journey forward has been strengthening you. James chapter 1 verses 2 through 4 speaks about trials producing perseverance and perseverance developing maturity. This principle reminds us that the difficulties we face are not meaningless. They are part of a process that shapes our resilience and deepens our understanding of life. When you view your past relationship through this perspective, you begin to see it not only as a painful experience, but also as a chapter that contributed to your personal development. Contributed to your personal development. The patience you learned, the boundaries you established, and the faith you strengthened all become part of the person you are today. Another aspect of healing involves learning to trust again. Another aspect of healing involves learning to trust again. After experiencing disappointment, many individuals become cautious about opening their hearts in the future. This caution is understandable, but it should not turn into permanent fear. This caution is understandable, but it should not turn into permanent fear. Trust grows gradually through consistent actions. When you encounter people who demonstrate honesty, respect, and kindness over time, your confidence in relationships begins to rebuild. You learn that not everyone will repeat the same patterns you experience before. The key is to allow trust to grow naturally rather than forcing it quickly. Observe how people treat others, not only how they treat you. Pay attention to how they handle responsibility, communication, and conflict. Character is revealed through actions repeated over time. Proverbs chapter 20 verse 6 says that many claim to have unfailing love, but a faithful person who can find. Faithfulness is one of the most valuable qualities in any relationship. It reflects integrity, commitment, and consistency. It reflects integrity, commitment, and consistency. When you build connections with people who demonstrate these qualities, your relationships become stronger and more stable. As your life continues to move forward, you may also discover that your purpose extends far beyond personal relationships. You may find yourself investing energy into helping others who are facing similar struggles. Your experiences may give you the empathy and understanding needed to encourage someone else who feels lost or discouraged. This is one of the beautiful ways that God transforms pain into purpose. The lessons you learned through your own journey can become guidance for someone who is just beginning theirs. Your story can offer hope to individuals who believe they are alone in their struggle. 2 Corinthians chapter 1 verse 4 explains that God comforts us in our troubles so that we can comfort others with the same comfort we received. When you share your wisdom and encouragement with others, you extend the impact of your healing beyond your own life. Over time, you will recognize that the decision not to return to your old relationship was one of the most important choices you made for your future. That decision created space for growth, clarity, and new opportunities that would not have been possible if you had remained trapped in the past. Your life begins to feel lighter, not because every problem has disappeared, but because you are no longer carrying the emotional weight of a relationship that drained your spirit. Peace becomes a normal part of your daily experience rather than something rare. With this peace comes a renewed sense of direction. You begin setting goals with greater confidence. You invest your time in activities that inspire you. You strengthen your connection with God and deepen your understanding of your purpose. Each step forward confirms that your journey was meant to continue beyond the relationship you left behind. The future holds possibilities that could only appear once you release the past completely. And as you continue walking this path of faith, growth, and wisdom, you will discover that the life unfolding before you carries far more peace, clarity, and purpose than you once imagined. The lessons of the past remain as quiet reminders guiding your choices, while the opportunities of the future continue to reveal themselves little by little as you move forward with patience, courage, and trust in the direction your life is taking. You begin to realize that the strength to walk away from what no longer serves you comes not merely from willpower, but from a deep understanding of your own worth. It comes from the acknowledgement that your life has a purpose and a plan that extends beyond the temporary comforts or familiar patterns of the past. The scriptures remind us in Isaiah 43, 1:8, 1:19, to forget the former things and not dwell on the past, for God is doing a new thing. This truth becomes a cornerstone in your journey forward. It teaches you that clinging to what was comfortable but harmful can blind you to the new possibilities God is placing before you. You start to sense that your soul deserves more than repeating cycles of disappointment and heartbreak. You begin to feel that your spirit has been designed for restoration, for growth, for flourishing in ways you could not have imagined, while tethered to an old connection. As you embrace this mindset, you notice that your daily habits begin to reflect your renewed commitment to yourself. You guard your time, your energy, and your emotions with more care. You invest in relationships that uplift you and align with your values. You pursue dreams and goals that may have been postponed or ignored because of the emotional. Investment in someone who did not contribute to your life positively. And in this you find a deep sense of liberation. It's a liberation that comes not from simply leaving someone behind, but from stepping fully into the person God created you to be, a person equipped with wisdom, resilience, and a vision for the future. Resilience and a vision for the future. There is a natural temptation to rationalize returning to what feels familiar. Memories, shared experiences, and moments of vulnerability may seem like bridges worth crossing back over. But you learn that familiarity is not proof of love or compatibility. It is simply memory. Love that honors God and nurtures your soul is not meant to be repeatedly tested by heartbreak or cycles of disappointment. Proverbs 4:23 teaches us to guard our hearts, for everything we do flows from it. Guarding your heart in this way is not coldness. It is wisdom. It is an act of spiritual maturity. It is understanding that the vessel of your heart must be protected so that it can receive the fullness of what God intends for your life. The emotional journey of leaving a relationship behind also brings moments of doubt and loneliness. You might find yourself wondering if you are missing something essential, or if perhaps there was a path not taken that could have led to happiness. But it is in these moments that faith must rise stronger than fear. Faith reminds you that your value does not diminish because of someone else's choices, nor does your destiny pause because of a season that ended. Philippians 1:6 assures us that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. In other words, the divine plan for your life is not contingent upon past relationships, but is actively unfolding even as you step forward. As this awareness grows, you begin to notice subtle shifts. You begin to notice subtle shifts in your perspective. Gratitude becomes a regular practice. You start to recognize that even the challenges you faced were shaping you for something greater. You give thanks for the lessons, the clarity, and even the pain, because each has contributed to your growth. Gratitude is not merely a polite reflection. It is a transformative spiritual discipline. It changes how you perceive the world and your place within it. Takes her. You perceive the world and your place within it. It shifts your focus from scarcity to abundance, from loss to potential, from regret to hope. Your understanding of love itself transforms. You begin to see that love is not about possession, control, or dependence. Love in its highest form aligns with the principles of kindness, patience, respect, and mutual growth. It honors boundaries and nurtures character. 1 Corinthians 13 describes love as patient, kind, and not self-seeking. Kind and not self-seeking. It rejoices in truth and endures all things. When you reflect on these qualities, you realize that returning to a relationship that violated these principles would be a betrayal of your own understanding of what love should be. This realization empowers you to set new standards for your relationships. No longer do you accept what falls short of respect or dignity. You develop discernment and ability to recognize the intentions and character of those who enter your life. And with this discernment comes a profound sense of freedom. The freedom to engage in relationships that elevate your spirit, and the freedom to decline those that would diminish it. As you journey forward, you also learn the importance of self-compassion. Leaving behind a familiar relationship does not erase the hurt or the mistakes, nor should it. You are not perfect, and neither is anyone else. Perfect, and neither is anyone else. But you learn to forgive yourself for any perceived shortcomings in the past. You understand that mistakes do not define you, they refine you. They refine you. Ephesians 4:32 teaches us to be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forward. Always extending this same grace to yourself is critical in breaking the cycle of regret and guilt that can linger after a breakup. Community also plays a vital role in your healing. You surround yourself with people who encourage you, challenge you, and reflect God's love back to you. Challenge you and reflect God's love back to you. This support network provides perspective, wisdom, and affirmation. It reminds you that you are not alone and that your journey is not meant to be traversed in isolation. The encouragement of others helps to fortify your resolve, making it easier to resist the temptation of revisiting what is no longer healthy for you. In addition, you begin to notice that your sense of purpose becomes sharper. When a relationship ends, space is created for personal vision and divine direction to enter. You might find yourself exploring passions, talents, or opportunities that were previously neglected. These pursuits not only provide fulfillment, but also create avenues for influence and impact that extend beyond your immediate life. Romans 8:28 tells us that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. This perspective allows you to see that even the painful endings are orchestrating something meaningful for your life. As the months and years unfold, your resilience strengthens. You discover a profound inner strength that comes from weathering emotional storms while maintaining integrity and faith. You realize that your spirit can withstand challenges, and in doing so, you inspire others who may be struggling in similar circumstances. Your life becomes a testament to the power of perseverance, faith, and divine guidance. Faith and divine guidance. Your future relationships begin to reflect the wisdom and growth you have cultivated. They are no longer experiments in filling a void or escaping loneliness. They are intentional, guided by clarity, respect, and mutual understanding. You enter these connections with a grounded sense of self, a matured perspective, and an unwavering faith that God's timing and plan are perfect. And in this continuous journey of personal and spiritual development, you recognize that the act of never returning to your old relationship is not merely about rejection or loss. Relationship is not merely about rejection or loss. It is a declaration of self-respect, spiritual alignment, and readiness to embrace the fullness of life that God has prepared for you. Each choice, each step forward, and each moment of reflection becomes a building block of a future that honors both your humanity and your faith. The discipline of walking away from what is no longer serving you ultimately transforms into a lifestyle of wisdom. You no longer rely solely on the external validation of relationships to define your worth or happiness. Instead, you anchor yourself in God's promises, in the lessons learned from experience, and in the integrity of your own heart. You move forward with confidence that your life is directed by divine purpose, guided by spiritual principles, and enriched by the growth you have achieved. At this stage, every encounter, every decision, and every relationship you engage in is approached with intentionality. You have developed a keen sense of what nourishes your soul and what detracts from it. You invest in people and experiences that align with your values, dreams, and spiritual calling. This approach ensures that your life continues to progress in alignment with both personal and divine objectives. You also find that your capacity to love and empathize deepens. The lessons of the past enhance your ability to connect authentically. The lessons of the past enhance your ability to connect authentic. Live with others, you offer grace, understanding, and patience not only to others, but also to yourself. You recognize that the journey through heartbreak was not merely a trial, but an education in the art of resilience, wisdom, and spiritual depth. The more you cultivate this perspective, the more you realize that the decision to never go back is ultimately a decision to honor God's design for your life. Jeremiah 29:11 reminds us that God knows the plans He has for us, plans to prosper us and not to harm us, to give us hope and a future. By refusing to return to a relationship that contradicts this divine design, you align yourself with the destiny that God has ordained. Your story becomes an emblem of hope for those who feel trapped in cycles of pain and repetition. Your journey illustrates that leaving behind what no longer serves you is not abandonment, but advancement. It is not defeat, but an act of courage. It is not weakness, but a profound expression of faith in God's plan and timing. You begin to inspire those around you, showing that peace, growth, and fulfillment are attainable when one chooses wisdom over comfort, faith over fear, and God's purpose over human approval. Through your life and choices, others witness the transformative power of aligning decisions with spiritual truth. And so, as you continue to walk forward with courage, integrity, and faith, you realize that the life you are building is richer, fuller, and more meaningful than anything the past could have offered. Each day reinforces your understanding that returning to an old relationship would have been a detour from the purpose and blessing that await you. Each moment reinforces the wisdom of moving forward, guided by God's love, grounded in faith, and driven by the vision of the life you were always meant to live. You notice that the more you embrace this path, the lighter your heart feels. Memories of past hurt lose their grip on your spirit. The weight of regret diminishes. In its place grows a sense of liberation that allows you to pursue new opportunities with clarity and confidence. You understand that by refusing to return, you are not closing doors to love and connection, but opening doors to a future that reflects your highest potential and deepest calling. You realize that the journey of leaving the past behind is ultimately a journey into fullness of spirit, clarity of mind, strength of character, and depth of faith. You see that every step you take away from what was harmful is a step toward what is abundant, peaceful, and life-giving. And so, as we draw this reflection to a close, remember that the decision to never return to a past relationship is not merely about moving on, it is about stepping fully into the life God has designed for you. It is an act of preparation, a declaration of self-worth, and an expression of faith in His perfect plan. By letting go of what no longer serves you, you create space for restoration, growth, and new blessings to flow into your life. Your heart becomes lighter, your spirit stronger, and your vision clearer. You embrace the wisdom that God's timing is flawless, and that every ending in your life is a preparation for a greater beginning.